Hi guys, welcome back. This is Heather with Creativity by Heather BE, and today I am showing you 5 cards from one kit, and this is the Simon Says Stamp August card kit. This kit was awesome. Simon Says Stamp has really stepped up their card kits recently, so this kit not only came with one full-size stamp set, but also a background stamp set, which was awesome. So just really quickly here, you got some Nuvo drops, the Doodlebug hearts, which I'll use both of those, this awesome floral background stamp, which is just gorgeous, and then a very large stamp set. This month was all about florals and some beautiful sentiments, and then of course there was also cardstock. So getting right in for card number 1, I am going to be using these Lawn Fawn stitched circles throughout the video on several cards. And what I like to do with some of my 5 cards, 5 kits is go ahead and do a lot of the cutting and die cutting off camera. These videos tend to be a little long, so this just kind of saves some time. So for the background here, I am using the My Favorite Things watercolor paper, and then also some Lawn Fawn Blue Jay. So when I do Simon Says Stamp kits, I don't really mind pulling some other companies' products in if it's something that I need to do, like papers, things like that, because they do sell this stuff. So I think it works a little easier when you're doing a Simon Says Stamp video because you can purchase this stuff through them. So this is going to be a very simple card. I am going to make this one a thank you card. So what I did is I cut down a piece of Blue Jay cardstock, and I believe it's 2 inches by 5.5, I believe is what it is. I'll have the numbers on my blog for you. And then I cut a piece of the gorgeous pattern paper that came with the kit, and this is a butterfly paper, and I am, instead of using double-sided foam tape, I'm actually just using a piece of fun foam to adhere this down because I wanted to give that a little bit of dimension. So when we put the pink circle that's going to have our sentiment, it'll slide right up under it. There were some gorgeous papers that came in this kit, and I'm going to use 3 or 4 of them. I always have extra papers left over with these kits, which I love because then I can use them on other projects. So I am going to adhere this to a card base, and for all of my card bases, I use Neenah Solar White 110 pound, and I take them, once I get a ream, I take it to Kinko's, I have them cut it down for me, and then I come home and I score them, and they're ready to go in the drawer. It's a quick tip that I got from Jennifer McGuire that has saved so much time. So for my sentiment, I am using the thank you, and this stamp set had a lot of gorgeous scripty sentiments in it, very large sentiments that can be the focal point of your card, which is what I'm doing with this one. So I stamped it out in the MFT, I believe it's After Midnight is the color of this ink, just a dark navy color. And I stamped it on a piece of pink paper that actually came in the card kit, and I was going to use that frame around it, and I decided to leave it off. I thought it added a little too much to the card. It made it, I know it's just a frame, but it seemed a little more busy to me, so I just went ahead and left it off. I wanted the butterflies really to kind of be the standout and the focal point of this card, aside from the sentiment. Now I am going to use some Nuvo drops, and for the Nuvo drops, I did use the bubblegum, which came in the kit, and I know this looks small, but these will last forever. I actually have the large bottle, and so I'm going to use the little one until those are gone, and you can use these on many, many projects. So the ones that came in the kit, the pink, are the bubblegum, and then I also am going to bring in my own, and this is Aquatic Mist. And that is our finished card. Very simple thank you card to keep in the stash, to give to somebody. Just liked it. I did take some shimmer pen and go over those butterflies as well. Okay, card number 2. For card number 2, I wanted to do a card that had a peekaboo window in it. And if you're not familiar with that, what you do is what I'm showing you here. You just cut some type of shape. I used a circle, and I'm using the My Favorite Things craft paper. And what I did is I just cut a circle. So my main focal point of the card is going to actually be on the inside and kind of poking out or peekabooing through the window. So you can see there I chose one of the stamps that had just some flowers in a pot. And I am the worst at getting things centered and lined up. And so it is a little off-centered when after I stamp it and we close it up, but it actually worked out better for the sentiment. So you know what? We're crafters. If somebody looks at my card and says that's not centered, then really, did they get the point of the card? So we do our best, and it's handmade. So I am taking a Post-it, full page Post-it note and masking off where I stamped, because what I'm going to do is take the background stamp and I'm going to do some tone on tone. But what I'm actually going to use is the Brutus Monroe embossing ink, and you can use Versamark, whatever ink you want. I love the Brutus Monroe. I think it's really a juicy pad. I think it works the best of the ones that I've tried. It's just a preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp that onto my craft cardstock. And you'll see that you get this beautiful tone on tone, and it's pretty dark there. And as it dries, it even settles in a little bit more, as you'll be able to see in the pictures. Now, because this is a wet, sticky ink that is, waiting basically to be embossed, I do take my heat gun and just make sure that that is dry before I start my coloring. So for using the craft paper, I am going to use my Prismacolor colored pencils, if I can get the layer out of there. And I'm just doing simple coloring here. I have sped this up incredibly fast just because it did take me a little bit longer to color this. So I'm just using simple browns, I'm using pinks, blues, and then a little bit of purple. So that ring up there is going to be the frame on the outside of the card, and I pulled it in because I wanted to make sure I was getting pinks that matched up and the blues that matched up with the front. So very simple. I really only used 2 colors. I used 3 for the pot, and everything else was 2 colors. Very simple coloring. So you can see it kind of peeks through. So after I put my frame on, I'm going to put my sentiment on the inside. So I'm going to use Nuvo adhesive, liquid adhesive. Love this adhesive. It's forgiving. It gives you a few moments to kind of shift, because as I said, I am not the best at lining things up. So it gives me a little moment to kind of shift things around and make sure they're where they're supposed to be. And I kind of went back and forth about as far as putting a sentiment on the front, but I decided to keep everything on the inside. So the sentiment I'm using is for you at the top, and then from my heart to yours is on the bottom. So I'm using the Hero Art Summer Sky for the top color, and I masked off the bottom sentiment because I wanted to do that one in Razzleberry by My Favorite Things. And I didn't get it masked off well enough because when I started to stamp, a little bit of the Razzleberry got up into the bottom of the Y of the U. So I just decided to roll with it and went ahead and inked it up a little more to kind of give it a little bit of an ombre effect. And I actually like it better than just on the blue and the Razzleberry. So you can see at the bottom here in a moment where the U on the bottom, here you'll be able to see it. It kind of has that little bit of an ombre because when those two mixed, it kind of gave it that purpley. I am using the little Doodlebug hearts. I love these hearts. They're very tiny. There's a variety of colors. So I'm using a pink, blue, and then almost like a darker fuchsia color pink. And that completes card number 2. Very simple. This one's probably one of my favorites. So simple to do. Doesn't require being a great, artist as far as being able to color. Very simple. And I love the tone on tone. Okay, card number 3. So for card number 3, I decided to do a shaker card. In a recent video, I did a shaker card where I used 3M foam tape to be able to create my little shaker pocket. And so this time I wanted to create one using Fun Foam. And the difference in doing it this way versus using the 3M tape is this is a little thinner. So another cool thing I'm going to do that I love to do this technique, and I haven't in so long, is I'm taking rubber bands and just wrapping them around an acrylic block. And this is so simple and inexpensive, and it just creates fun backgrounds. So I'm going to show you how to wrap them very quickly on the large block there, but I'm going to use the smaller ones. So one of the things I suggest is getting a bag of rubber bands that has different sizes, different thicknesses, so that way you can kind of get different effects with it. And once you get them wrapped where you want them, all you have to do, and I'm using worn lipstick and peacock feathers, and you just take your block, turn it over as if there was a stamp on it, and just stamp it in the ink. For me, I think the Distress Oxides work better for this, only because they stay a little bit wet, and it's easier for me to take the baby wipe if I'm using multiple colors and get rid of that color when I'm done so I can go on to the next. But any inks that you have on hand will work for this technique. So you can see you get these awesome designs, and you can stamp it down once, kind of move the rubber bands around, and then stamp it again and get a totally different design in the same color. So I wiped my rubber bands off just with a baby wipe and went over them with a regular towel to dry them off. And now I'm just stamping in peacock feathers. And you can see it just gives this really cool effect. And you can twist the rubber bands and it'll kind of give it that twisted look. So there's so many things you can do with this. And I think this is a great technique to use also for somebody who's younger. Maybe if you're doing like a birthday card for a teenager. It's just such a fun technique, and you can do whatever colors you want to do. So really fun. I did go back in and decided to add some more worn lipstick in there and some peacock feathers. So just kind of going in and filling in any little holes I had, and just work with it until you get it where you want it. Because this is Distress Oxide, I did hit it with my heat gun just to make sure it had dried so I didn't smear it. So now I need to work on my shaker element. So what I did is I took the foam piece that I had already cut with a circle die, and I just laid it on my card panel and marked it a little bit with a pencil so I knew where to put my circle die down for my front panel. If it's not exactly correct, it's okay, because I can shift the foam panel in the back around, so it's not that big of a deal. And I'll save that inner circle to use for something else, because I'm actually going to use a piece of the pattern paper that has the same colors in it that came in the kit. It's a really pretty floral color paper. And what I'm doing is I put my panel that I used the rubber bands on, and I put it on top of a piece of white panel, and I'm kind of using that as my placeholder, so that way I know I have my pattern paper exactly where my shaker is going to be. And I'm going to cut a piece of acetate. I happen to have acetate. This is actually acetate that you can heat emboss on. And I thought about heat embossing my sentiment, and I changed my mind. But you can also just use acetate that comes in your stamps, your packaging, things like that. You don't have to go buy acetate. So I am using some double-sided tape to stick this down. And once I adhere it down, there are some areas that are a little bit sticky. Remember, to get rid of any stickiness, all you have to do is take a powder tool, whether it's the powder bag, or if you have the little powder when it's got the tip on it, whatever works for you or whatever you have, and it'll get rid of that stickiness. So I am going to, this is also going to be a thank you card, I am going to stamp my sentiment onto the acetate. Whenever you're stamping on a slick surface like acetate, Stays On ink is really probably the best ink to use. It's very sticky. It will stick to your stamp, so make sure you clean your stamps off as soon as you're done with it. But it is the best to use on any type of slick surface. So acetate, things like that. Anything that's slippery, I always use the Stays On ink. And Stays On ink is very inexpensive. It's been around for a long time. And this is something that if you're not placing an order with a craft company, you can just pick it up at Michael's. And there's our sentiment. So now we have the thank you. So that way our beads, and I'm cleaning off that stamp. I am using the Brutus Monroe stamp cleaner again to clean that stamp off, which works wonderful. And now we have our sentiment. And I like to do the sentiment on the acetate, so that way the sentiment doesn't get hidden by the beads and the shaker bits that you have inside your shaker card. And really, this card would look great even without the shaker. The way I just had it there, I could have put that panel on and finished it and been done if you didn't want to do a shaker card. So the shaker bits I'm using, these are by Jelly Bean, and I'm not sure the exact name of them. And the pink ones are the Brutus Monroe Ballerina. Love these. They're a gorgeous pink color that kind of, when they catch the light, they have a little bit of different shades of pink. And I am using the Nuvo spoon there. I saw this spoon on many videos and I thought, that's kind of a waste. But I have to say, it was not very expensive, and I love it. So if you've got something extra, you want to just kind of splurge, that is a great thing to get. It really helps with getting those sequins and shaker bits in your card. So one of the things I did make a mistake on here is I put too much. My pile was too big. So the way I'm going to fix that is you'll see me kind of just shaking the card out a little bit because my pile was pretty big in the center. And then I was able to just adhere everything else back down. And also when I was picking up the panel that had the foam tape, the fun foam on it, it has started to come up a little bit. All I had to do was just go back in and glue it back down, and it stayed for me. So that is the shaker card. Very simple. Love. I encourage you to try the rubber band technique. So simple. Rubber bands are so inexpensive. We all have acrylic blocks. I'd love to see what all you can create with that. So much fun. Okay, card number 4. So for card number 4, I'm using a technique that I saw Jennifer McGuire actually did this in a video a while ago, and it's called stamp tracing. So simple. So what I did is that is a piece of pattern paper that came in the kit, and then I'm using the Lawn Fawn Blue Jay again because I wanted to use a darker color, because I am going to use gel pens to trace over my stamp. And the gel pens I'm going to use are the metallics. I'm using the Pentel metallic gel gold and silver. So those show up better on a darker cardstock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp out my stamp with Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige. And this is a great no-line stamp pad. And I believe this came in a kit at one time last year. But on this cardstock, you'll still be able to see it, but it'll be really light. But once I go over it with my pens, you're not going to be able to tell it was there. But this is a great like no-line coloring, watercoloring ink to have. So I've stamped out my image, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the silver for the bucket that the flowers are in, and then I'm going to do everything else in gold. This is such a simple technique, but it looks so gorgeous on your card. All you're doing is tracing. If you have not one artistic ability at all, you can do this. Stamp the stamp out and trace it. That's all you're doing. You can also do it on just regular white cardstock and add color to it. It's gorgeous. I use the Kaiser Color gel pens whenever I'm doing this. These are actually the Pentel. The Uniball is what I was looking for, and I couldn't find them, but these actually have worked out really well. So you can see, so simple, and look at that, how it pops. So I decided to add the For You sentiment next to it, and I also, you can see, I didn't stamp down far enough on the pattern paper, so I just took a really light, I believe it was C1 Copic marker, and just kind of did a little bit of a shadow to make it appear that it was sitting closer to the table. And the For You, I decided to heat emboss this, and I was going to use the Lawn Fawn Silver, and you'll see I'm just getting ready to dump it, and I stop. And I decided that I wanted to use the gold, so I did end up using the Lawn Fawn Gold embossing powder for this one, and I'm glad I did. The gold ended up coming, really making it pop, and I will add the silver back in. So once I heat set that, what I did is I decided to cut the panel down, and I wanted to have the Tonic mirror paper in silver for my background. So I was able to still go ahead and pull some of that silver in. You can see my shirt there. And still use the gold embossing powder. So I really like the way that it came out. So all I'm going to do now is just adhere my panel down. And I decided not to add any embellishments or anything to this card. I wanted the flowers and that sentiment to really stand out and be the focal point. Once again, another technique I highly encourage you to do. So simple. I'm all about simple techniques, inexpensive, that make our cards just pop. And this is a great one. And there's our finished card. Okay, for card number 5. So for card number 5, I am going to do a couple different things here. One of them, I've already cut out several flowers and used my Zig clean color brush markers. And I'm going to do another one on camera here and show you. And I'm also going to be using the background stamp to create a 4-colored background. So this stamp honestly was one of my favorites and what attracted me to this card kit. It is flowers that are on a ring. And I saw so many really cool cards from the design team and different people that have used this kit. But I wanted to do something a little bit different with it. So what I decided to do was to stamp it out. And I'm using the Gina K Copic friendly, watercolor friendly ink for this one. And I use this one. I like the Brutus Monroe Raven. I like the My Favorite Things. Honestly, they're in a drawer, and whichever one I grab is the one I use. They're all great. So I'm going to stamp this out. I don't need the whole thing because I'm only going to use the top part, the flowers. So for the colors that I'm using, I'm going to do a pink one here on camera for you. And I use the light pink and the light green and the deep green. And I'm not going to use any water. So this is on Bristol Smooth cardstock. That's what I love about these pens, is they are, watercolor pens, but you don't have to use water with them. They have beautiful color even without. So the designer of this stamp, the artist, put in a lot of the shadows for us. So it was very easy. I pretty much just followed the same shadows that the artist had drawn on the flower, and it went back over it with the dark pinks, or the light pink, excuse me. So I'm using the regular pink here. And I had thought about doing this as a watercolor card, but then I decided to just go ahead and just color them regular. And that's the great thing about these pens. And I believe the Arteza pens are the same way. I know a lot of people have started to use them. They're a little bit less expensive than the Zig. I already had the Zig ones, so I'm just continuing to use them. So whichever ones you have, the same thing. You don't always have to watercolor with them. So with this one, I am going to fussy cut this out, which is not one of my favorite things to do, but this one was not that bad. And so I'm not going to use all of the leaves and all of the greenery. So I'm only going to color in what I'm going to be using. So I'm just taking my pink and going over it, going back over, just blending it out. Very simple, easy coloring. And that's where I'm showing you that I'm not going to be using all of the greenery. So I'm only going to color the leaf on the top and then the ones over on that right side that I'm coloring now. So what I'm doing is I'm going over them with the deep green, and then I'm going to go back in with that light green. And there was an area there to the right where the band, the hoop that the flowers are on, would show through. And all I did was just color that green, and you can't even tell that it was there. It looks like it was just part of the greenery. So once I go over it, once again, going back in just to darken up those shadows a little bit from using the light green. And that's it. So now I'm going to fussy cut this out. And I'm only going to end up using 3 of these flowers, so I'll just keep the rest for another project. And there's our flower. So what I'm going to do with this background stamp is I am going to create 4 different colors on my panel using this one background stamp. And I am going to start with the Gina K Wild Lilac, and I'm just going to stamp up in that corner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my panel and I'm going to lay just 1/4 of it down. Now you can go in and you can actually divide this up into quarters using a T ruler, whatever will help you. I'm not that I don't want to say organized, but I just lay it down and, kind of generally had an idea. It might not be perfect, but I just went with it. So if you want it more precise, definitely take a T ruler and mark off your areas. And you can see where it is when you have the paper on there. So as you pull it up, you'll see I have it just in that corner. So by doing this, you're able to do 4 different colors. And you could just stamp the 4 colors out on your stamp and just lay the whole panel down if you want. You could do that as well. So the next one I'm going to do is Lucky Clover. So I'm going to do green over beside the purple. And I just found that it was easier to actually get a rag and hold it there and kind of push down on it, because you don't want to shift your panel. So now you can see we've got the 2. And when I do the bottom one, which the bottom color here, the blue, is a Gina K Sea Glass. This one is where having the lines might help, because I didn't get it over far enough, as you're about to see. But it was an easy fix. And what I was going to say, where the lines meet, like with the purple and the blue, and where the green and the hollyhock from Simon Says Stamp is going to meet, it didn't matter to me that those overlap, because I knew that's where I was going to put my flowers. So if you know it's an area that's going to be covered up by something, it doesn't have to be perfect. So to fix that little area, I'm going to just stamp out about the size I think I need, stamp it down. It didn't exactly come out perfect, but on the finished card, it's not really that noticeable. And then for that last corner, I use the Simon Says Stamp Hollyhock. So you can see you get this gorgeous 4 different colors on one background, and you could stamp this out the same way and heat emboss it and have 4 different colors heat embossing. You don't have to do all 4 sides. There's so many things. You could do half and half. There's a lot of different variations that you could use. So for the flower in the middle, I decided to use the blue, and here I actually have the 2 pinks, and I'm going to change that, as you can see there, and change it to a purple. So the pink and the purple flower are, they have dimension with some thick foam, and then the flower in the middle is actually just adhered down. And I'm going to use the With Love stamp that came in the set, and I love this. The font and the script in these were gorgeous. And that is card number 5. So I hope you enjoyed this 5 cards 1 kit and got some great ideas for techniques, and I encourage you to try them. So much fun. I'd love to see what all you guys create. So if you want to, once you create something, add it to my blog, leave it down in the comments or email. I'd love to see what you come up with. Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and you guys have a great day.